So welcome back to the Butterfly House with me, your host, Jane, who is the beady butterfly. It's a beautiful day. My doors are wide open. So welcome in, listen to some stories which are threaded with fibre. And this time I've tried to thread them. So there's no organised set thing. We will just wander down my threaded road and see where the journey takes us. It's been pretty much that way for me for the last fortnight, actually. I have not settled very well to anything. So today's episode will have dabblings here and there and everywhere, with not a lot of finished things, but a lot of creativity. And I have found that this is often the way for me. I've had a particularly difficult fortnight. Some years ago, I suffered very severely with chronic depression, and it was touch and go on many levels, but I came through it for two reasons. The most important, and my counsellor would chide me for this, but the most important was for my children, of course, but also for myself and my I looked upon myself as worth saving in the end, if you like. And so I did. And I took up a craft, back to a craft, this fibre craft. And when I feel less than well, the creativity becomes more. I do find that a little bizarre, but not uncommon. Of course, without wishing to link myself directly to these wonderful, talented people, you can look back on history and think about artists and comics and anybody who lives their life thriving through and on their creativity, and you can see how at their best is when they were perhaps at their worst. Van Gogh is a good example as an artist, and even as people as far back as Da Vinci, who were on the surface unhappy people, but I think were driven by their moods. And comics such as Tony Hancock, he's a good example of a British comic. Jerry Lewis would be an American example, who we would now perhaps rather cavalierly throw in bipolar, but I think that is such an overworn phrase. And at the end of the day, when you're depressed, you're oppressed. And creativity can be heightened. It can be heightened, of course, in positive emotions too. Let us not forget that, dismiss it. But the negativity can be as purposeful as positivity. And so in sort of the vein of acceptance, my word of the year, I've had to call on that a lot this last fortnight. I'm getting too serious now, and I don't want to be serious, although, the yin and the yang of life. And I've had some lovely, lovely supportive messages, and that's what, I know it's said so many times, but this community, and I'm on the fringes of a very large community, but however far out from the centre you are, there are people who are there with you, who reach out to you and for you. And there has been a particular lady who has done some lovely things for me in terms of supporting me emotionally. So I'm not going to say who you are, but you know who you are, and you have sent me some very, very lovely messages. So thank you. And so we will move on to something more positive. First of all, I'm going to dump my tea. Dump? Let's dunk. Let's not dump, let's dunk. So here we go. Today is one of my favourites, and that's vanilla. Here we go with the little escapees coming out of my pod. I like vanilla tea. I find there's a comfort in the smell. I think it's obviously something from childhood, I suspect. And I would go so far as to link it to my grandmother and her cooking. She was a fantastic baker. And so when I smell something with vanilla, even though it may not be its prime ingredient, I can smell it a mile away. And so it brings me comfort. So I am drinking my comfort tea of vanilla, and as you can see, I'm hoping you're getting a really lovely look. From my side, of course, I've got the light shining on it, and so I'm getting that amber glow. You should get some of that as it releases. I'll let it steep for a little while, and we'll have another look. And also, I'm going to have a very quick flash of my show notes, and I have resorted to an old way of noting full stop, that I used to do a lot in order to organise, particularly in the darker days, organise my thoughts. I think it's quite indicative of how my mind is working right now. And so I have got my mind map, if you like, which is just one long great big thread of stuff. So everything here is dumped on the table. You can maybe able to be seeing the tops of various things in no order whatsoever, and so I'm going to follow my thread that I have written. And my thread starts in crochet. I talked a bit about some crochet last time, and I gave you some examples of some silk bowls that I was working with, and I showed you how I do tapestry crochet. So I'll just update you on that. I've made one more little bowl. It's yet to be starched. It's much more shallow. Just chuck that teddy over there. That's my daughter being funny. It's more of a dish, I suppose. I've kept it quite small. I still have a little bit of this colour. I didn't have quite so much of this particular colourway, and this is part of one of my favourite palettes. I do like the peacock colours, the teal and the deep purples, and the black thrown in for counterbalancing and depth of colour. If you put neutral like black or what, not so much white, grey maybe, it makes other colours more vibrant, and so that's what that black is doing there. You even see a little bit of bright green coming through. So I've finished another one of those. I won't do many more. I do have a little more of this thread, but I won't do many more because it hurts my hands, because there's no stretch in the fibre, so it's quite tough work, and my arthritis in my thumb is playing me up. I broke that thumb when I was about, I don't know, 7 or 8, and the break was so bad, the scar tissue has made my thumb much longer, and I got trapped in a door and nearly chopped off. Yeah, horror story. However, the result of which is, as I grow older, this middle joint becomes more and more painful through pressure. And link it back to crochet, thread my story back, it hurts. So there we go. I've made another one. It will probably finish off the collection enough for the craft fair. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 there, and I have a couple of others in a different crochet style. I may show you those as well, which tap into my recycling passion. Maybe I'll bring those on in another thread. So that's crochet coming through, and I'll update you on the tapestry crochet, which I did say at the time is only a dip in and out, and so I've turned the corner, so to speak, and I'm now coming up in height. A bit hairy for some reason. We're starting to build the walls, and I'm forming the pattern through. The reason why it takes longer to do this for me is because it is a very repetitive and easy craft. My mind moves away from it in terms of focus, and I fall into my rather negative habit of having conversations, which I shouldn't do. They're not pretend people. I'm not going potty, but I try to work through my worries by having conversations, either with myself or with the other party involved, and they can become obsessional, actually, which is something and when I'm doing a craft like this, I move into that and I need to move away from it. So I really like to only do this when there's lots of activity in the house, but the result of that, of course, is I don't concentrate enough, and so I have to backtrack and do a few stitches. However, there we go. So that thread is coming along nicely and moving on. I'll pop that over there. Let's have a look at this tea. It's coming along nicely. I'm rushing it a little bit because I want to drink it. So I'll just spin out the loose liquid. It's lovely. Yes, that's very vinegary. Beautiful. Now, I mentioned also last week that I had been tidying up my space a little, and in the tidying, along with many other things that I found, I did find several, I'm looking at them now and thinking, really? Several partly finished dabbling things. So I'll very quickly show you those, and simply in terms of it's reflective of my fortnight as opposed to has any real purposeful crafting. So this is a product that I again make for my stall. Let's pull it out. These are very small bandanas for your pooch. Not for cats. Cats don't wear them. They're too cool. Too cool for school, cats. However, my own dogs have several in various colours. And so I make them to sell at various bits. So I found that lurking in the back of the cupboard, along with this beautiful silk yarn. So it varies sometimes, and they're all scraps of this, that and the other, and it's ways of using yarns. I have lots of little balls of stuff that I've collected over the years, and so I put them together and have a bit of fun with it. So that's still to finish. And then we move into things which I started them, and then I'm now looking back and going, what the blooming heck was that? And this being a good example. I've no idea what this was for. It's a bit of filet crochet, which I do love. I've made a curtain out of filet crochet, and it's one of my favourite things. And so I've made this, I don't know what it's for. As you can see, it's a series of heart shapes. If I put it right in front of my face, you'll probably see more clearly. So it's hearts of two different types going in two different ways. And so I've got this great big long green end, and then I've got a middle section of purple. Now I have a strong suspicion I was going to tail it with green and make a scarf, probably put some edging on it. Can't remember. But I can't, in my tidings up, I haven't found this green. But I've got lots of this purple, so I may put purple on the other end. But the purple is the soft bit that you'd want next to your face. I don't know. So there you go, that's another thing. Started, put away, and seemingly has nowhere to go. I will try to find the thread of that energy and do something with it. And then I found this little chap in the back of the cupboard. This is a fibre that I bought, gosh, it must be 4 or 5 years ago now, and I bought it on eBay, and I have no idea now what it is. I think it's cotton and linen, just by the way that the fibre is working. It's a very, very, very tight twist. I don't even know if it's pure natural fibres, but it feels quite linen-y. And somewhere inside me, someone said it'll work for crochet. It obviously does, because it's crocheting up beautifully. And what I've got here is a series of star shapes. I can't find the pattern that I used, if indeed I used one, because I can't remember that either. They're quite intricate pieces, which when you block out are going to be very pretty. And I'm obviously crocheting as you go, because they're all joined. And I've obviously got a shawl in mind, haven't I? I would say I've got a shawl in mind there. But it hasn't got very far, has it? Hey-ho. So that's another thread of fibre that needs following through. Obviously got lots to use. And I've obviously enjoyed using that, because I've also got this over here. Now, I've got more recollection of this one. So this takes me through out of crochet and into knitting. And this is from a book that my children bought for me for Mother's Day about 2 years ago, and it's Estonian lace. I didn't take the book off the shelf, but I'll show you what I've done. And why did I stop this? I think I stopped it because I needed the needles for something else. That's not very fair on them, is it? But I've got, and this is this linen / cotton / haven't got a clue thread again. It's very delicate. And obviously as you use it and wear it, the stiffness of it goes quite quickly. Oh, that's probably in your way. I'm so sorry. Let me just stick it over there. It might fall on the floor. However, I'll show you. I'm clearly almost... I'm doing the cast off edging now. I know the pattern. I know where it is. I can quite easily finish this. So it's an applied edging to it. And we're working down... Get it the right way up. So this is the applied edging. And it's a series of lace points that come off this shawl, which, if I get it the right way up, might give you some idea. So this is your top edge that's on the waist yarn at the moment, and it runs down and stretches through. It is going to need some blocking because, believe me, once it's stretched out, it doesn't look like a string vest, which it does at the moment. And so it comes down like that, and then this is a different style of edging that continues off from the top lace, and then you apply a border, this triangular lace border along the bottom here, and then the reason why it's on waist yarn at the top and the applied border also has been done on waist yarn is because you end up with a very, very, very long top line, which then has a finished border on the top of that. So it's quite a complicated, bitty construction. However, and it will be worth the finishing. And I know my kids would like me to finish it, because the minute I got the book, I felt, if you like, duty bound to knit something out of it for them to see, because it's a lovely book. And I've obviously got distracted, which is the way of the world, I'm afraid, with us avid knitters and crafters, isn't it? But I would like to finish it. It's beautifully lacy. Wouldn't that be lovely as a summer shawl? So maybe I will put that in higher up the to-do list. Yeah, let's pop that back in that bag. It's stored in an old Body Shop toiletry bag, like you do. So those are little finished items that I found and that I meandered around with at some point. Excuse me, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but they'll have to come off the table because it's so crowded. And that one, I'll get confused. And then this little guy here, I have found some old cotton. I made a shawl from this many years ago. This is just gorgeous, isn't it? It is Performance Cotton Queen, 100% cotton. There we go. And I just had a few bits left over, and this is absolutely where my head was at. I did this not long after I finished recording last time, and I just fiddling around and tidying up and thinking, I don't want to do anything. I do want to do something I don't really want to do. And I found that stuffed in the same bag as that, and I thought, oh, that's pretty. I bet that's calling me to do something and fiddle with it. So I started to fiddle with it, and back to crochet actually. I made some centres, little clover leaf centres out of the green, and then I've expanded them through to make four-sided squares. Well, that's nonsense, all squares are four-sided. So it's gone from 3 to 4, and I've made several of those, and my sort of vague idea is to join them into a series of lines, which I will then stitch together and make a stole from. I wonder why I'm doing stoles so much. As you will see, it's a bit of a theme developing through, because probably because I've just done so many triangular shawls now. I want to do something different. There we go. And I also have a beautiful, that Joss pattern that I still haven't picked up since we last spoke. That's a stole. So those are my meanderings, and historically and otherwise, but they do bring me nicely through into something I have finished and that I had worked on last time I saw you. And it was with the Jameson. I'll show you the pattern, remind you of the pattern, which was this one, which was this Shetland Crescent, Kieran Foley for Jameson and Smith. And I commented then on my how I wasn't overly positive about the fibre that I was using. It's Shetland wool, of course, and off the ball and knitting with it, I was finding it itchy. I wasn't seeing the truth of it. And then Tilly encouraged me to look more forward and be more positive in terms of her experience. And she felt that with good soaking and blocking, the wool does indeed bloom. And so I persevered through and I did exactly what she suggested, and she's totally right. It is 100% better than I feared. It's still too itchy for me though. However, my daughter, who has a tendency towards feeling the itch, if you like, she can wear it, but not for long next to her skin. We are a funny lot, aren't we? Let me show you how it turned out with the block. Beautiful. It's light as a feather. Of course, it is lace weight, but it's not massively big. And what my daughter did was she had a shirt on at the time, and she just, I will vaguely demonstrate, but of course it won't carry so well with me. And what she did was she had her bare skin protected, and she wore it more like a decoration as opposed to something to keep you warm. So she tied it off the shoulder. She's a little narrower in the shoulder than I am, so it fitted her beautifully, and it just hung beautifully on her. So she may well have it as a gift, or I may put it away in the present box. So there, it's delightful. It blocked beautifully. It's still quite spongy. There's still loads more stretch in there. I could probably be even more aggressive with it. If it stays in our house and next time it's soaked, I might try to make it even bigger. I followed all the instructions on the pattern. So as I say, the yarn is lace weight, and the needles that I used were recommended, which was a 3.25 to cast on and work your pattern, and then you go up to 3.5 to work the last border colour, the cream, this part here, the garter, and then you cast off on the very, very last, literally your cast off edge, you cast off on 5mm needles, so you get this really loopy effect, which is quite effective, and it has a nice little movement and ripple to it at the bottom. So I highly recommend it as a pattern. If you have no issues at all with woolen yarn, go for the yarn, but I think any good gradient in lace weight, or I would stick with a gradient yarn as opposed to anything too patterned, speckly or otherwise. And there it is. Lovely. So that was more of a success than I had feared. I'll just sip my tea for a minute, I'm drying up. So we'll follow the thread, and a little update on the bracelets that I made. I didn't do any more, but I did pick my button, and it is a vintage button. It's an early American plastic button, and I have 3 of them, and I really only have them as decoration on my shelves, and I happened to pick it up and thought, oh, that's so pretty. It is plastic. I hope that is focusing. But when I put it on the bracelet, it looks so pretty. So I'm just placing it there. As I say, I obviously haven't sewn it on, but I will endeavour to show you how it's going to look. It isn't what I had in mind originally. I wanted to go for something that coordinated well with the seed beads, which are that slick effect of multicolour, like oil on water. However, that was so pretty on the green that I decided that actually when you wear it, it's going to make a statement of its own. So you could almost day wear and evening wear type thing, if that is your leaning. So that's picked, and I feel more positive in terms of where that's ended up. And so I will talk about my brooches. The brooches, I finished the little one. He now has an ear. You probably can't see that because it's in a silly plastic bag. So let me take that out. There's the little mouse that we saw last time. And this hand spun creature. I'm guessing we'll call him a rabbit for want of a, I don't know, thing, space alien. Anyway, he's finished. He needs his pin, but I'll leave all those till I've done a collection and do them all in one go. Those ears, honestly, as I said before, trying to knit with your own single ply, hand spun, but doubled up, not plied together, was a bloomin' nightmare. However, he's done. And then I made, this little guy is made out of that mercerized cotton, and he spoke owl. What I did with this one actually was I kept the back set of stitches completely flat, no increases. And then the front set, as you can see, he's quite flat on the back and he's got this lovely fat tummy on the front. I formed him through increases and decreases, no short rows involved. I just, as I went up, I increased to this point, then I did some straight knitting, and then I decreased back out again, and that gave me that nice rotund shape. And he said, I think I want to be an owl. So I happened to have these very large mother of pearl, they are beads because they came off a necklace, they're mother of pearl, and they're stitched on, embroidered bits and bobs, and little ears which have been knitted, and they were knitted flat and then stitched on. They curl over nicely. So that's another one. And then I found some old bits and bobs. I know I've shown you in the past the Irish crochet lampshade, and it was covered in roses which were knitted, and so I found a few spares and I made a brooch. It's backed up on a paisley crocheted central shape. This was a leftover piece that I was exploring shapes with when I was designing the lampshade, which it ultimately became larger and bigger on the lampshade. However, I had this as a base for my brooch. A couple of leaves left over from the lampshade. These were left over because I ran out of the original cotton that I was using, and so I had to go on to a slightly different one and then intermingle them as I sewed them in, so they wouldn't stand out too much as being different. And these were just two leftovers. And then the little roses, there's 3 little rosebuds, and they're knitted. They are knitted on something like 1.25mm needles. I can't find the pattern anymore, but I think it was free. I'm sure it was free on the interwebbies. And you basically knit, you cast on, it's cast on a very long cast on. I think you cast on, I'm going to guess numbers here just out of recollection. You cast on, let's say, 40 stitches and knit 1 row, and then as you come back you increase sharply, so you might double them, and then you knit back and then you double again. And so what you end up with when you cast off, the cast off edge is the curled edge of the rose, is something that spirals into itself, which is quite common to see in crochet when you crochet into a chain, but knitting is quite unusual. And I like the way, the texture that you get in the knitted rows. And then I spiraled them up and sewed them onto this brooch, and it will be very pretty, very easy to make, quite enjoyable, and a good way of using up scraps, which I think is a positive thing to do and a way of moving forward and decluttering space, head, quick fix, all that sort of thing. So they were all little dabblings. And my thread is now pointing me in the direction of socks, and the fact that I had no socks at all the last time we spoke. However, as you also know, or may or may not remember, or now learning if you're a new viewer, is I talked about it several times. I went to John Arbon's open mill, and I hadn't been to a place like that before. And as I posted on Instagram, I was totally blown away by the intricate process of sheep to sweater, effectively, the journey that the fibre takes. John Arbon as a mill starts their part of the process, and which is the larger part of the process, with fleece that has been cleaned of natural waste, shall we say, and or sheep poop, let's not be too delicate about it, and lanolin and all of those sorts of things. So they end up with a product that, although full of bits and pieces, is essentially de-sheeped to a degree, but not over processed, not by any means. I think it may have had 2 cleaning processes, possibly only even 1. And so then they take that product and bring it through a series of processes to result in fibre. If you'll excuse me reaching down, I have an example of their fibre. I'll just reach for one here. If it's to be dyed, as is this one, and not the natural colours, it's sent away with instructions on their own colour choices. So the dyeing process is not done in the mill, is what I'm trying to say. And then it comes back or is still there, and it goes through several processing stages, which removes the detritus that sticks in, and or pretty much all of it, I assume. And it aligns the fibres. They spin on a worsted fibre, not a woolen fibre. So they have to align all their fibres. So they only take long stapled sheep fleece, and throughout their processes they're moving the fibres around so that they start to line up and form these long lines of thread, and then they haven't even started to spin. The spinning is actually right near the end of the processes, and off the top of my head I think I counted 8, possibly even 10 processes before you end up with this beautiful fibre. And so I bought a few bits and pieces. Part of the mill opening was to give you the opportunity to buy some things at a reduced price, which was nice. I did become a mill member because I was so impressed with the way it works, and it's British wool, and I just wanted to. So I bought a few things. I've shown them on Instagram. I'll show a couple now, simply because I've got them here at my feet. So I bought some DK, which I don't have very much of, and I just bought some of the tweeded barber pole colours, this being an example of it. There's 2 or 3 others. I'd have no idea what I would want to do with them. They're beautifully soft. This particular one, it's 100 grams DK. They call it nettle, and it's 100% merino. And you get 250 metres from this, and it is soft. In my head, I'm thinking hats, gloves, cowl maybe. It is soft enough for that. Of course, it's merino. I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. I will design something for myself out of that though. And then I bought this one, which is a light 3-ply made from Exmoor Blueface. It has a slightly more coarser feel to it, but nonetheless not itchy. It's 490 metres in this 100 gram skein, and I have a series of colours. And when I picked them up, they said to me, shawl. So I will try to come up with something. 70% Exmoor Blueface, 30% Blueface Leicester. 100 grams skein. So a few of those, and I have the John Arbon label on there, which is, I like that design. So that was my journey through. And how does this link to socks, you might ask? Of course, I had to knit something in the car because it was a 2-hour journey, almost exactly 2 hours. And all my projects, I didn't want to crochet because if the car is moving and jiggling around, it's, you have to be more controlled with where your hook goes. All my knitting projects at that point either involved beading or following a pattern because of lace stitching. So of course, socks, it's got to be, hasn't it? So I started up a sock, and I showed it on Instagram, and I didn't take a pattern. I feel, without wishing to sound overconfident, I feel I've done enough socks in terms of knowing my own personal stitch count and what to do and when to do, that I could happily knit away on a sock without a pattern. So I started a sock and just did my own shaping, stitch pattern, blah blah blah. And here's one sock. So in the car on the way there, I got to here. And then on the way home, I got to about there. So that's an hour's worth of 2 hours worth of knitting. And that's another 2 hours worth of knitting. And then I finished off during the next couple of days. Because once you start, you just got to finish the sock, haven't you? The stitch is, I think you would call it brick stitch, and it's alternating knit and purl. And the size of the bricks are to your taste, and mine are 4 knit and 4, and then reversing the position. So we went up with this brick stitch, and I like my pattern to go all the way around my leg. I have discovered the joys of shorter socks, so I don't, my socks used to be about this long, and that's okay in the depths of winter, but as a cooler weather, I like the shortness of this, because I happen to do it with another pair of socks. I don't know whether you remember the pink ones, pink contrast with the pretty pink and yellow and pale duck egg blue pattern colouring to it. And I did the short socks simply because I wanted to see if I could get a pair of socks out of a 50-gram ball, which I could, which meant that I ended up paying something like £2.30 for that ball of wool, and I got a lovely hand-knitted pair of woolen socks for £2.30, which I thought was a bargain. So I did it again, and there it is. And I think I love the colour. This is my colour palette. So I finished that one, and in my lovely Debs from Threadedwithfibre sock bag, I have the other one coming along a treat. Here he is. I say coming along a treat. Now I've remembered looking at it. I've just yanked the needle out of all of those heel stitches because I went wrong and I was tired and grumpy, and I couldn't find the problem. I thought I found it, tinked back the 4 or 5 stitches, carried on, still got it there. I did that about 5 times. I thought something is fundamentally wrong with that heel flap. So I just pulled out the needle in a temper. You can see it's hanging there. The only stitches are on the pattern stitching. And I shoved it back in the bag. That was about 2 nights ago. Bar humbug, I said to myself. The yarn I'm using, here's the other 50-gram ball, is Drops Fable. It is colour 651, and it's lovely. I love that colour. I'm coordinating it with Drops Uni Colours, is the label, which is colour 110. So helpful, aren't they, these colours? It's a 4-ply sock yarn. Blah, 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 blah. 75% wool, 25% polyamide. Or polyamide, or however you want to pronounce that word. Polyamide in my day. And I am using, what needles am I using? I don't think I've got them in. Oh, it's my phone. I just found my phone. I had no idea that was in there. Butterfly mind. Butterfly heart, butterfly mind. I've no idea what the needles are. They are Addies, and they're probably 2.25. That's pretty much what I use for all my socks. So, yes, in need of a quick repair job there, and carry on regardless. But it's an easy to knit sock, and it definitely something as a I just need to knit moment. So there it is, a pair of socks. This will be pair number 8, I think, of 12 this year. I'm fairly confident of doing my 12 and hoping to do about 15. We'll see. I seem to have gone off the boil a little bit with socks. But it only takes a success, and then you're back on track, aren't you? So that's my sock. Now, somewhere in this recording, I've added this section in because I've suddenly realised I forgot to include it. And I put it on Instagram, and a lot of people reacted strongly in a positive way. So I feel I must add it in. So however I've slotted this into my thread, it'll probably jar a little, but nonetheless, here it is. And it was a glove pattern that I just randomly started. I was watching Lorelei Erto, who does Threads and Beads. I think that's her podcast. I apologise if that's wrong, Lorelei. And she talked about a sock that she was doing, and I was entranced by the cuff, effectively, and the pattern, which I immediately jumped onto Ravelry and purchased, was this one. And she, at that point in her podcast, she had done this and was working her way down the leg and had got to somewhere around this point here. But I was intrigued by the lace cuff on this sock. However, I didn't want to knit socks. I'd already got my other sock going, which I've either spoken to you about already, because I put this in after it, or you've yet to see that piece of work to come. And but I kind of saw that as a cuff of a glove, really. I thought, yeah, I'm going to mess around and Frankenstein it, as I called it on Instagram. And so I rummaged around. It's a DK weight sock, which I've never done DK weight socks before, so I wasn't 100% sure about my numbers. I've got them off pat with my sock weight yarn, and so I rummaged around in my scraps bag, 2 or 3 of them I've got, and came up with this yarn, which is Stylecraft Alpaca DK. And I had used this, can't remember what for now, it's a piece of home furnishing stuff. I think it's a table runner. I think that's what it is. And I didn't use the green, funnily enough. I used the other colours, so I used this. Unfortunately, I don't know what the dye... Oh, yes, I do. I can tell you. Yay! So this one is cinnamon. I used some cinnamon. I used some cream. And I used some toffee. So those are my colours that I picked. They go quite well together. It's very soft and very cosy and very warm, but not envelopingly warm like wool. So they're not going to be a really heavy duty winter mitten, but they're fingerless mitts, so you're not going to be heavy duty knitting, wearing. And I came up with, yank it all in, ta-da, this. Here is my one mitten done. The needle size that is recommended for the sock is what I stuck with, and it is 2.75mm DPNs. Really basic pair, because it's the only pair I could find in the right size. And the reason why I've only made one mitten is because I've lost a needle. Don't know where it is. I've dropped it somewhere. I think it's somewhere over there. Anyway, so that's the needles, and it makes a very close knit fabric. So the hand of this glove is quite firm. So there's the lace cuff, which I kept true to pattern, didn't play around with in any way, shape or form. Then I added a ribbed central cuff, and then just making up as I went along. I followed the leg pattern on the back of the glove, and then knit to fit on the thumb, and then topped it off with the same rib as the cuff. If I put it on my hand, amazingly, it is a perfect fit. Even the cuff is tight enough. I did wonder whether that would be too loose, because as I was knitting it, there wasn't much shrink back on the rib. But it is perfect. I'm just going to take myself out of the light a little so you can see that cuff. Isn't it pretty? It's not, ends aren't woven in. I only finished it last night. And it fits. And this thumb increase, again, I was a little concerned that it might be a bit wide in the thumb, but nope, it fits. I suppose if you wanted to be warmer, you could just knit that longer and then place that higher up your fingers. I'm happy with that because of dog walking and what have you. I like to feel my fingers quite free, but it's easily adjustable to put a longer hand on it. And there we go. Just thought I'd add that in because it got such a positive reaction on Instagram. So somewhere in my podcast this week, I've inserted this extra. Thank you. Let's pop them down there. And so that thread brings me nicely on to knitting shawls and the lefty. How's it coming in its handspunness? Not an awful lot more done, I don't think, than I think I might have think I was on the third leaf, so I've only done that many. But you can now have a good indication of the balance of handspun to something more professionally done than me. This is John Arbon's fibre, something I picked up in a D-stash on Ravelry. And this is my handspun in the cranberry. That was a cranberry, I think it was cranberry something. This is fondant fibre fibres. And this was an art bat that came with a spindle that I bought and was not in its bat form, not something that I envisaged as being that successful because it was too jam-packed full of stellina and silk. Catching something. However, it turned out to be one of my most favourite hand spins. There we are, I showed you that last time. But nonetheless, I'll show you again because it is so yummy. I don't know how good the colour is. It's because the sun goes in and out. It's a lovely day, but it's not sunshine, it's cloudy. And the cranberry, it was that one, a lot of barber polling in there, so that will break up that pinkness of it. I'm knitting this lefty on Addies, and I'm using a 3mm needle. I don't know what pattern calls for. I thought it called for, and I think I mentioned this last time, I thought it called for something. I'm just going to move this off your view so I don't give anything away, because it's a paid for pattern. Let's have a look. I thought it called for needles that were larger. Smaller. So it calls for 2.5mm circulars, and I think I plumped for 3 because of my handspun, and I liked the looseness. I love the looseness I'm getting from this John Arbon mohair, and it is so soft. Pillow soft, as I think I said. And that's the cake on my beautiful, all 3 done on my Stork ball winder. I hope some of you are saving up to buy your own. It is the most pleasurable experience, if you can put pleasurable experience in the same sentence as winding up yarn. It works for me. That is its purpose, and it is successful. So there we go. So that is the lefty. I'll flash above again. Where is he? There he is. I like the reverse side as well. It's quite funky. It's going to be a warm shawl. There's some depth of feeling to it. I'm not rushing it because it's definitely a winter thing, and it is a very pleasurable project. Now, the reason I didn't take this one in the car, and I would quite happily have done because I've already memorised the leaf pattern, it's very simple, is because I'm beading, of course, and there are 1, 2, 3 beads in each leaf point. 1, 2, 3, and all the way down. Just little amber beads to give it some sparkle, weight. And I didn't want to be doing that in the car. That would have been ludicrous. And there would be an awful lot of beads rolling around in the bottom of Mr. Beebe's car. And that would not have been good. So there we go. That is lefty coming along nicely. And it takes me into a little bit of spinning, but I've got some on the wheel. I am spinning hedgehog fibres, and I think I've mentioned this, I've even shown you one of the spools. I did finally finish half of my plait, and I'm now starting on the other, but it is so difficult to draw this fibre. That's silk. There's 25% silk in there, and the drawing on it is really hurting my thumb, so I have to sort of gird my loins to it, if you like, and I do it in short bursts. But it's coming on, and I'm loving what I'm getting from it. The colour is very soft, muted, sort of. There's a cranberry red to it, but it's softened with a grey tone that barber poles through, and I can't wait to show you. There's little flashes of green in there too, and then where the dye has been quite rich, you have a small section here and there of really deep cranberry red, I suppose you'd call it. Sort of this colour that you can see in this piece of lace work here. Beautiful. And I'm hoping that when I ply it, because I split the fibre up to 2 full long lengths. I'm hoping that roughly the spin will come and align so that when you ply, those deep colours will still be kept as intense as they are, because they will meet each other in the ply. We'll see. However, what I also did was finish off some, before I went on to the second section of that spin, I finished off some alpaca that Mr. Beebe had bought me for my birthday, and it's the infamous fibre that Django the puppy likes to take to bed with him and cuddle, haha, or chew if it's more than likely. And my first set of spin on that, if you remember, I've counted it up now, gave me 369 metres, and that is more than 3/4, but not enough for what I have in mind for it. So I finished off the bits and pieces that were lying around, and I've added another 100 and I can't remember what it was now, 130, something like that. So I'm hoping that I have enough for a design I have in mind, and I am venturing my first baby steps into a garment design, which I will share with you as we go. It's on paper as a drawing at the moment. I'll possibly be able to show you. Oops. A quick loose sketch. You might not even be able to see it, but it's basically a sleeveless cardigan. You probably can't see that, and that's a pointless exercise that I've just done. However, it's on the page so that I don't forget, because I will forget, and I'll look at it and go, what did I want to do with that? And so, because this is my fortnight, you see, moments of got to do this, got to get it out there, make note of it, and then lots of moments of I don't really know where I'm going with this. Anyway, it's on the book, it's in the books, committed to memory, paper memory. So that I've enjoyed, and I'm pleased that that spun fibre is done, and hopeful that there's enough, and we will see. I might have to moderate my design a little bit to accommodate the quantity of fibre I've got out of that. So if I add the two together, I have, I'm going to show my poor maths here, so let's call that 370, and that's 134, 500 metres, roughly, there, hopefully. We'll see what we can come up with. And I did enjoy that, I'm really pleased, and Mr. Beebe gave me that fibre, so that's a good thing all round. So that was that spin, and so designing takes me on into my own design, which is in the bag that I showed you last week. And somebody was very complimentary, 2 or 3 people were very complimentary about this. Thank you for that. Positive encouragement, and that went somewhere, and I will show you in a second. However, we'll go to the knitting design, and I am this close, not this close, but this close to finishing what I'm coming up with. Hello, Django. Do you want to come up and say hello? Can you come round, Django? I'll have to clamber over a few things if he wants to. Hello, little boy. What have you picked up? He's got that teddy I threw on the floor. I hope Mr. Beebe rescues it. Sweet. Yeah, so here we go with the first design from the beady butterfly. Hopefully not the last. We'll see. We'll see. It's been a pleasurable experience, largely because actually it looks like what was in there, and minimal tink back. The only thing I am struggling with, and because it's my shawl I can fiddle with it as I go, is I am just struggling to make the math, the tiny finer points of the math work for someone who has to read the pattern. As knitters, we can all make adjustments as we go, and so the final product still is essentially the pattern that we purchased. You know, you might not pick up quite the same amount of stitches that the pattern requires, but as you knit along you can make little adjustments, that type of thing, which is essentially what I'm doing. But it's such tiny numbers, we're talking like 1 stitch in this space, but if I put it in the hole it doesn't seem to add up, and all that sort of thing. So I'm just having to play around with that a little bit. I'll show you where I'm at with it. If you remember, it was using the mercerized cotton, because I'm making a summer shawl effectively, and this was this one. And I had 3 balls, and the 3 balls each give you 280 metres. And I'm on the last one, and I'm probably about 2/3 of the way through it. It is enough there to finish what I need it to do, but I won't have much left, which is great because that was really what I was hoping for. And so, without wishing to lose stitches off the needle in any way, we have, make sure it's the right way around, so far got this. Now bear in mind it needs a huge great block. I go to the end that I've finished. There we are. So we have the stole with the leaf design running through. And I decided on roughly 2 meters. It's slightly over the 2 meter mark in the central panel. It's 81 stitches, and you knit along until you want to, really. And I balanced it. There's a central panel point which is there, and then this and this is the same, obviously. And then the edging, which will run around 3 sides of it, is this. And so it's a lot of stitches to pick up along the length, but once you've picked up your stitches, you're actually only knitting 13, which maximises to 16. And you just trundle your way around. And I've gone down to the corner and then all the way along the full length of the shawl, and I am at this point, which is why I say I'm almost there. Doobie-doobie-doobie-doo. I am now at the other corner. I've just got to go round that little bit of corner and down the short side. And what gave me so much pleasure and confidence was the calculations that I made to work the corner so there won't be any distortion when you block your shawl. And blow me down, it worked. Yay. So that's your angle, corner angle of your stole, and this border edging stretches round without distortion. So pretty. So pleased I didn't have to tink back once. So on that occasion my math worked. It's this long pickup, because it is so long, and because the distance you travel, if you don't get the pickup perfect to pattern, it won't matter. As long as your pickup is divisible by the pattern repeat, it doesn't matter. So what I will probably do is I will knit it in a knitted fibre, a woolen fibre, just to check that it works as well. I think it will. And then I will offer it in 2 patterns. The stole in the middle, I will offer the choice of knitting it as the stole or a scarf, and then the second part of the pattern will be the added border to give you your stole. So you can do it 2 in 1. That's the plan. And so, yep, we're on our way to finishing. Now, as I said, I put this in my project bag that I designed and made, and which will feature as a product on my stall and then go into the Etsy shop eventually. And so I had to make the modifications that we talked about. The interfacing on this I was dissatisfied with because it's too crunchy, and the pocket design that I put in purposefully for needle storage needed a bit of fiddling, and so I did both those things, and success. So we'll share that one. I'll just have a bit more tea first. And here it is. Here is the first of not many. I'm not going to mass produce because of the way that I work. This one I kept quite simple because it was more about looking at size, how much can I get out of my fabric, the construction and everything having a purpose to the design, if you like. Also, when I use a project bag, what is it about that bag that doesn't quite give what I want from it? And a lot of the time it was the zip. Yeah. Amount of times I've caught my zip. And then sometimes it was other little fiddly things. So that was the purpose of that, was to see how to address the things that bugged me. Now, what I created may indeed have things in that would bug someone else. That is the nature of the beast in design. And thankfully too, because that means you have a myriad of choices out there. So I have changed the interfacing, and I'm now using a much more tactile, forgiving quilt batting, if you like. It's still iron-on, but it has a sponginess to it, which still provides. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. Let me just put this on a book. It still provides enough for it to stand up on its own, and that's an empty bag. Normally, of course, you'd have your bag full of knitting, wouldn't you? But this is completely empty. So it still provides enough support to give you a bag that stays upright and sits. But it doesn't have that fighting factor where it's fighting against your will and your wishes. So that was the first thing I changed successfully. And then the second thing I changed was the inner pocket, which I'll show you if I can, but the lining of this is quite dark. And the reason why I won't go into mass production, if you like, on these is because of this, effectively. I can't resist the decor. So on this particular bag, as in with any piece of fabric that I might pick, and I'm just going to randomly pick a piece of fabric from my collection. She says, picking very carefully. Pick that one. Don't know what it is. Okay, so we've got a piece of fabric here which has little tiny trees on it. Really rather sweet. Okay. Now already, to me, the minute I look at that, I am seeing how I would work my style. So if you can see here, there's little grass, stylized grass here. So I would overstitch that with some embroidery socks. That would be the first thing. Simple overstitching in satin stitch. So just starting to create a dimensional feel to it. And then each of these trees has its own little design qualities to them. So for instance, that one there is a series of circles, and to me that speaks seed beads. So I would probably satin overstitch the stem to give it some weight, and then overstitch seed beads on there. That would be that one, and they'd be randomly placed, and so on and so forth. And so whatever piece of fabric I pick, I let it tell me what it wants. I might put little tiny single strand French knots in the centre of that one, so on. And so it all is very time consuming, isn't it? Nonetheless, an enjoyable experience for me. And what we end up with is effectively, I try to sound modest about it, but I think you end up with a piece of art. And somewhere in everyone's collection is a place in our homes where we would proudly sit a piece of art that is still has connections with the things that we love, which of course is our knitting or crochet or indeed sewing. So there we go. That's how I feel about this. It has its top flap and then its little side openings, which I added in that way. I could have just kept it flat like that, but things have a tendency to fall out, don't they? And so the reason for changing the interfacing was this action that I'm about to do, which is folding down the cuff and the hard interfacing. As time has gone on, and I'm not sure you're going to be able to see this terribly clearly, but what is happening is the use of the fabric is separating the interfacing from its material, and you're ending up with little air pockets in the fabric, which I don't mind on the thing I'm using, but it isn't something that I would look at in terms of quality product. So I've changed that, and I'm rolling down, and I'm getting that lovely, lovely squishiness about it with no impact on the fabric in a negative way whatsoever. So on this particular one, what I've done is, in order to give something pretty to look at when the cuff is down, because you do cover some of this, I probably rolled it down just a little too far. I try to place the animal button. This time it's a dog because I like the colours, but this would be optional and indeed could be cat or dog depending on your preference. So it rolls down to there, and then I've hand stitched these seed beads which match a lot of the beadwork here, particularly around the cabochon at the bottom there. just as a little bit of extra interest. And then inside we have the label with the attached notions pouch. Now these notions pouches are entirely dependent, and they'll all vary, and they'll all be something that, if you like, an added thing. And they'll vary because of what might be left in terms of fabric. So this particular one, different from the other one, this is much longer and thinner simply because of what I had left. But all of the little pouches are lined. So they are lined, and they have their little tab with pins for your stitch markers. And I will make stitch markers to be included in the kit, if you like. So that sits inside the bag. And the pocket, what I've changed on the needle pocket that I put in, I'm going to turn this completely inside out so you can see what I'm showing you. I've anchored the lining to the base of the bag because that was one of the issues that I wanted to address in terms of things that irritate me, and that is often the lining is either not quite as big as the outer bag or is too big, and so it all gets a bit muddledy inside, particularly as I'm picking these long sock or shawl shaped project bags. So I've anchored the lining. It fits exactly the same size as the outer bag, and I've anchored it so that it doesn't come away. And the pocket that I have placed, can't find it, there it is. What I've done is I've made it narrower and taller. And so when you put your knitting away, I will use my own for example, your needles, it is the size pretty much of the full needle. It was stopped short, the other one. It was about that much shorter and about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch wider. And so the needles rattled around a bit and had a tendency to flick out. So I've modified that design a little more, and it's much longer and thinner. So, and still big enough to fit a stitch holder in there, or pencil if that's what you keep in your bag or whatever. And so we now have the very first project bag that I will sell. Actually, that's not true. This is the second one, isn't it? Because I did that purple circular bucket bag last time. That's waiting to go on the stall as well. So I have two, but in terms of the new design. There we go. And it is done. I'm as happy as Larry, and sewing is, I find, very relaxing. So I have the radio on and bead away and let the beads and the stitching take me where it will. There's satin stitching here and French knots. I've cabochon. This is a very large bead, which its attachment in terms of use as a bead is a hole that runs from here through the centre of the bead, because it's about 3-4 mil thick, through the centre and out the other side. So in order to attach that to fabric, that's your only anchoring point, and it's obviously not enough because it flicks and turns. So I then created this support system in seed beads, and once that was attached, then I decided where else would it take me. Serendipity that I attached it in the right place so that it sits at the bottom of the bag. That was pure chance. So there we go, finished, done, happy, pleased, and ready to move on with new things. And so we bring ourselves to our final section in my thread, which has been in the past entitled Did You Know? And as we've been talking about sewing, and because to celebrate the start of the new series of the Great British Sewing Bee, I'm going to look at something to do with sewing. And I have made some notes which I'll have to refer to, because the way my mind is at the moment, there's no way I could memorise what I wanted to tell you about. And so I have the thimble. This is what we'll share today. So the definition of a thimble, and the reason why I picked it, not least because of sewing, is I have a very small collection. And I do mean small. Some of them my grandmother's, some of them are my mother's, and some of them they've just come in collections of ephemera that I bought as job lots at fairs and eBay and things like that. And none of them are in any way valuable. However, the three that I've got here, I'll put them on my fingers, they are 2 of them were my grandmother's and 1 was my mother's. So these 3 here, need a jolly good clean. These 2 are silver, and this one is brass. And this was my grandmother's, and these were my mother's. Quite intricate, these particular ones. That has little flowers. This one has pits with little flowers on the end. And this is a very, very simple and basic brass thimble. So the definition of a thimble: a small, hard-pitted cup. You hear Willow? Willow! We're going to have a little vocalising of the neighbours' activity. What are you telling me, Willow? What, they've stepped out of their door, okay, and they are breathing the air on this lovely sunny day, and I feel that the world should know. No? Django's looking quite anxious because Willow is doing all the talking and he's not getting a word in edgeways. Start again, shall we? So, yes, a hard-pitted cup worn for protection on the finger that pushes the needle in sewing. It speaks for itself, describes what you can see to perfection. Things like this are also washboard musicians wear them, don't they? To play their washboard. You could tap them, you could do anything wrong with them, really, couldn't you? I never use a thimble in sewing. I put a thimble on the finger I use to push, and then I use a different finger. What's that about? So I never use a thimble, but there we go. So let's have a look at the timeline of a thimble. In excavations in Russia, bones were found, and they were bones that were shaped and changed. They weren't things that you could wear over your fingers, because in the early days thimbles were pushing stones, for want of a better word, but these were bones. 30,000 years old, and they were considered to be used by mammoth hunters to stitch into leather, which of course they would need, wouldn't they? And they were little, I haven't really got anything to show you. Let's assume this is much smaller. So it's little blocks of bone which had little pits in them, and they were shaped to hold so that they would push the needle through the leather. Press stones, I think they were called. And they found examples of press stones dating 10,000 years old. So in 2,500 year timeline, bronze thimbles were starting to crop up, or needle pushers still. Still this, the cups are just starting to show forth in the form that we understand them to be. And these were from the Mediterranean. And indeed, in about 100 AD, Romans brought bronze to many countries, and indeed bronze thimbles have been found, examples of bronze thimbles. So that's accredited to the Romans. Moving forward to 1500 years ago, we have to start to find a more artistic development in thimbles. So we're starting to see thimbles that have an attractive pattern to them, not necessarily purposeful. This one here, you can see this is your pitting that you get in your basic thimble. So there's still functionality in this thimble, and its use is not impinged upon by its design. This one has less pitting and more pattern, and I suspect that this is a later thimble that focused more on its aesthetic look as opposed to its functionality. This one's quite functional. It's much thicker too and heavier, and this is really basic. So we're looking at 1,500 years ago. Masterpieces in thimble handicraft have been discovered in Nuremberg, which, as I talk about the development of the thimble, starts to progress quite a lot through Germany, and Holland is a country that takes the lead there. Paracelsus, who was a 15th century Swiss physician and alchemist, he discovered zinc, and this is a metal that was cheap to produce, because of course it's an alloy, well, part of alloys. And they used that to make thimbles. And so that discovery then gave the thimble market, if you like, became broader and more accessible and much cheaper, of course, because prior to that were more expensive metals like silver and gold. And then as of 1537, so we're leaping forward in time now, we discover the first orders for thimblecraft. And there was a entrepreneur, for want of a better word, called Jost Ammon, who printed a handicrafts book. And it's a log of various sewing accoutrements, and featured in there for the first time, predominantly, is a whole section on thimbles. So you could mail order your thimble, effectively. And in 1628, we have the first thimble mills established in Holland. And Holland is a little later on, is the foundation for Thimble Makers Trust. Django's just caught my eye because he's now chewing the head off that teddy. Django! Not the teddy, please, darling. Drop! He's sitting there wagging his tail. No. Can you drop? Please? I'm getting a look. It says, not on your Nelly. So, yes, 1628, we have now thimble mills established in Holland, which was later where the foundation of a Thimble Makers Trust began. 1700, Dutch manufacturers, J. Lofting, set up in London. And this is the beginnings of the industrial thimble industry, because machine-made thimbles are now predominantly the way forward, and which indeed, of course, these are, anybody can afford a thimble. It just went on from there, really. And people, thimble collecting, I think I'm going to be controversial here and say it's probably had its heyday. I'm sure there are many people out there who collect thimbles, and indeed you do see lots of displays of thimbles in people's homes. I think one of the reasons why thimbles became a popular item to collect is because it's often something is produced to celebrate. So there would be Victorians were great and avid collectors of many things, and the Crystal Palace exhibition, thimbles would have been, and all sewing paraphernalia, they would have been heavily featured, and ways for people with smaller pockets of money, so to speak, would be able to buy something to celebrate Victoria and Albert in some way or another. And so there would be many commemorative pieces, and indeed commemorative pieces are still being made, often china thimbles, which don't have any intrinsic purpose in actual sewing, but are sweet mementos of something important. And so people who collect thimbles, which is where I was going with this, are known as digitabulists. Obviously, the Latin for digit. I'm not sure about tabulist, but it will be something on the lines of on your finger. And so I'm not a digitabulist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do enjoy my collections. And there is a little superstition that attached to thimble collecting, which I will share with you as a final thought. And if you have 3 thimbles given to you, apparently you will never be married. So I'm happily keeping my modest collection and not looking to get married again. Take care, and see you again in a fortnight.